Black Elm Road was a narrow, wooded stretch on the outskirts of Kentfield, Massachusetts. The property at number 112 had been abandoned for nearly 12 years, a decaying Victorian structure that local children referred to simply as the house that watches back. On October 4, 2019, county deputies responded to a call from a contractor who'd been hired to prepare the home for demolition. Inside the sealed attic, he discovered a wall cavity containing what appeared to be human remains wrapped in layers of deteriorated linen. Authorities arrived at approximately 2:47 p.m. The first responding officers, Deputy Marlene Cruz and Sergeant Ethan Rourke, secured the perimeter and documented signs of forced entry consistent with structural inspection work, not vandalism. Within 40 minutes, the Kentfield Police Department's Homicide and Forensic Division assumed control. Lead investigator Detective Laura Chen was assigned case number KFD-19-4427, later referred to by the press as the Black Elm case. The attic of the home measured 18 by 12 feet, containing a series of braced wall studs and moisture damage along the northern side. The cavity that held the remains was located behind a false panel measuring approximately 1.2 meters wide by 0.8 meters high. Photographs taken at 15:21 hours show multiple fabric bundles stacked in sequence, each containing skeletal elements consistent with at least 3 individuals. The remains were transferred under sealed chain of custody to the Middlesex County Coroner's Office by 17:36 hours. Preliminary forensic analysis confirmed the bones belonged to 2 juveniles and 1 adult female. Public records identified the last registered owner as Eleanor M. Weaver, deceased in 2008. Weaver had inherited the home from her parents, both long deceased, and had lived alone for nearly 2 decades prior to her death. No known relatives survived her. Neighbors interviewed between October 5th and 8th, 2019, provided consistent testimony. Eleanor Weaver was quiet, reclusive, and rarely left the property. She was last seen publicly in late 2006, though no missing persons report was ever filed. Utilities had been disconnected since 2007. Despite this, investigators discovered an oil lamp in the attic with residue suggesting relatively recent use, potentially within the last 5 years. Dental and osteological analysis conducted between October 10th and 17th established that 1 set of remains matched Eleanor Weaver, age 68, at the estimated time of death. The 2 juveniles were later identified through mitochondrial DNA comparison as Clara Weaver, age 9, and Rose Weaver, age 7, both nieces of Eleanor, reported missing from Burlington, Vermont in 1998. Their disappearance had been initially investigated as a parental abduction following a custody dispute between their father, Thomas Weaver, and the state foster care agency. Thomas Weaver himself was found deceased from suicide in 2001, having left no record explaining the children's fate. This linkage effectively reopened a 21-year-old cold case. Detective Chen's early working hypothesis suggested that Eleanor may have taken custody of the girls informally and concealed their deaths, either by accident or intent. The precise timeline, however, remained unclear. Crime scene unit reports noted 3 distinct decomposition periods, implying deaths occurred at separate intervals over multiple years. There were no visible signs of blunt force trauma or gunshot wounds, though toxicology results were pending. Between October 20th and November 5th, investigators catalogued over 140 items from the attic, including 12 children's books, dated between 1994 to 1998, a rusted metal lunchbox containing small animal bones, several hand-sewn dresses, a journal belonging to Eleanor Weaver, entries spanning 1995 to 2006. The journal would later become central to the case. The recovered pages described voices behind the walls and references to keeping them safe from the eyes outside. While much of the writing was fragmented, forensic linguists confirmed the entries were in Eleanor's handwriting. One dated April 2nd, 2000, read, "They don't want to go down there anymore. The crying keeps them up. I told them it's safer in the quiet. Ukias." This was interpreted as a potential confession or delusional entry written during a state of mental decline. On November 9, 2019, the Middlesex County Coroner's Office completed preliminary autopsy findings under Report number 19-1042A-C. All three individuals, Eleanor Weaver and the two minors, Clara and Rose, had no indications of external injury. However, forensic toxicology detected residual traces of chloral hydrate and morphine derivatives in all samples. Both substances are sedatives, historically used in medical settings for anesthesia or to induce sleep. The levels found in the children's remains indicated lethal concentrations, whereas Eleanor's sample showed lower, non-fatal dosages, suggesting exposure but not intentional overdose. Dr. Irene Pavlov, chief toxicologist on the case, stated in her report, "It is consistent with repeated controlled administration of sedatives over an extended period. The evidence suggests prolonged exposure leading to terminal respiratory depression in the juveniles." In simpler terms, the girls were likely sedated to the point of death, though the method and motive remained uncertain. Investigators began to reconstruct Eleanor Weaver's psychological and social background from personal documents, community records, and archived medical notes. Records from Kentfield General Hospital, 2002, indicated that she had been treated for mild cognitive impairment and anxiety-related isolation. She had refused follow-up psychiatric evaluation and discontinued treatment after 3 visits. Forensic linguist Dr. Hannah Sola and document examiner Captain Raymond Lutz authenticated 116 journal pages written between 1995 and 2006. The entries showed a gradual transition from coherent reflections about her niece's welfare to fragmented, obsessive notations referencing keeping them inside where the bad ones can't look. Key entries included June 13, 1999. "The little one won't stop coughing. The doctor will ask questions I can't answer." December 1, 2000. "They are safe now. The walls don't speak when the snow comes." February 4, 2002. "I hear the scratching again. I will seal it for good this time, Norna." Investigators found several indications of self-imposed isolation and progressive paranoia, consistent with untreated psychosis. 6 surviving residents from Black Elm Road were interviewed between November 11 and December 3, 2019. Their statements painted a consistent timeline. Robert Haynes, next-door neighbor, recalled seeing the girls a few times in 1998 before they seemed to vanish overnight. Lydia Moore, who delivered groceries weekly until 2004, stated that Eleanor always paid cash, spoke softly, and disliked people coming inside. Pauline O'Rourke, a local postal worker, reported that packages addressed to the children stopped arriving by mid-1999. No one on the street had entered the property in over a decade. A critical statement came from Robert Haynes, who mentioned hearing hammering sounds late at night in 2006, the year presumed to mark Eleanor's death. When asked why he hadn't reported it, he responded, "We just thought she was fixing something or maybe tearing things down before she left." During structural analysis conducted by forensic engineer Martin Doyle, investigators noted that the attic had been intentionally reinforced using secondary plaster and wooden bracing, suggesting deliberate concealment. Traces of mortar and lime residue indicated the wall was sealed post-mortem, possibly months or even years after the final deaths occurred. The attic temperature and airflow conditions likely slowed decomposition, contributing to partial mummification of soft tissue. In one of the bundles, analysts discovered a silver chain necklace engraved with initials RW, later matched to Rose Weaver through family photographs from 1996. Additionally, beneath the attic floorboards, a small locked tin box was recovered containing a faded birth certificate, Clara Weaver, 2 locks of hair tied with string, a key matching the home's cellar door. On December 6, 2019, investigators opened the sealed cellar, the only part of the house previously inaccessible due to collapse risk. Inside, they located a cot, several empty medicine vials, and 1 small shoe. The air samples indicated high concentrations of formaldehyde and chloroform residue, implying prior chemical storage or use. The vials were labeled with remnants of a local pharmacy brand that ceased operation in 1997, suggesting all chemicals were acquired around the time the children were last seen. In February 2020, the forensic document team recovered a hidden envelope within Eleanor's journal's back cover. Inside was a short, unsigned note. "If they ever come, tell them I kept my promise. I never let them leave me." This note became the emotional and interpretive core of the case, reflecting Eleanor's distorted perception of protection, binding the tragedy into a single, unbroken act of control. Public disclosure of this evidence on March 14, 2020, reignited national media attention. The case was officially classified as closed, non-criminal, psychological homicide under the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, indicating no living suspect and no prosecutable offense. The Kentfield Police Department, Vermont Child Welfare Agency, and Federal Missing Children's Network were all contacted to reconstruct the oversight sequence dating back to 1998, when Clara and Rose Weaver first went missing. It was determined that jurisdictional fragmentation contributed heavily to the case's dormancy. Vermont authorities had filed the disappearance as a domestic custody case, not a suspected abduction. When Thomas Weaver died in 2001, the record was administratively closed rather than converted to a homicide or continuing missing persons file. Kentfield authorities confirmed that no welfare checks were ever conducted at Eleanor Weaver's residence, as no formal complaints or reports had been lodged. No criminal charges were applicable posthumously, and no living individuals were deemed legally culpable. By July 2020, the physical evidence catalog was finalized and archived. A total of 164 items were entered into the Kentfield Evidence Repository. The remains of Eleanor, Clara, and Rose Weaver were formally released for burial on September 1, 2020, following next of kin authorization by a distant relative residing in Maine. The interment was private and unpublicized. In Kentfield, public reaction was measured. Local authorities commissioned the demolition of the Black Elm property in April 2022 due to structural instability and contamination risk. Salvage crews reported significant rot, black mold, and asbestos exposure. The property was cleared within 6 weeks. A memorial plaque now marks the site's boundary fence, reading simply, "In memory of Clara and Rose Weaver, 1998 to 2002. The inscription was funded privately by residents of Black Elm Road. On December 14, 2022, the Middlesex County Court certified the case, indicating full investigative and judicial resolution. All digital and physical evidence was sealed for a 25-year period, subject to review in 2047. The document concluded with a single line: "No crime remained to solve, only silence to document." As of 2025, the Black Elm property remains an undeveloped lot. No further investigative activity has occurred since the final evidence log was closed.
If you found this case as haunting as we did, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because the truth always leaves a trail, and together we will follow it.